Hi, this is Amber.
And this is Lisa.
And you're listening to Unexplained Arkansas, a new podcast that explores urban legends, mysteries, and the unsolved in the natural state.
We're just two best friends discussing the unexplained in Arkansas.
Hello, and welcome to Unexplained Arkansas. This is Amber.
And this is Lisa. In the morning.
Gosh.
No, I'm just kidding. It's not even the morning.
It's the evening of a Sunday. Very long weekend, very long Sunday. So yes, we are both kind of tired. We've had a lot going on this weekend. I had a trip.
A lot.
I had a trip to Hot Springs Friday, and we'll kind of tell you about some of the things I found at the end of the podcast. And also, Lisa's daughter, had her sweet 16 yesterday, and just all kinds of fun things happening around here this weekend. So I need a weekend to recover from the weekend.
I do too, but I don't. My next 3 weekends are full. I'm just saying.
I think we are planning to go crystal digging next weekend. I think Saturday is the plan, to go back down to Hot Springs and go to one of the crystal mines and do that. We do that about once a year, and we try to go before it gets too hot, but it's a lot of fun. I think we're going to go to the Coleman mine.
Well, if you don't do that and it rains, you should go to Maumelle and watch Elle dance for the last time. Compete for the last time. Dance for
that'll
the
be
last time,
that'll be plan B. That'll be my plan
for this
B.
season. Yes. Your plan B. Yes, you're like, I would, but I don't want to.
Oh,
that's what we tell each other. We're very honest besties. I'm like,
even though I really should, because you watch Bo play ball, so I really should go. So I'll see if I can't squeeze it in there. We'll see what happens. So
we'll see what happens. Well, if you can do the crystal, it is a good time of year for that.
It is,
because it's just going to get warm.
Yes,
so,
and it's like being in HELL's waiting room when you go crystal digging in July. It's awful. I mean, I still go. I mean, I have gone in
July.
The hot months. Yes, I've gone in July. Yes,
that's disgusting.
It used to be an addiction, and I will be 110% honest. It used to be a real addiction for me. And
oh my,
yeah, we would go 2 or 3 times a season. And my kids would go, my aunt would go, we would all go and just dig for crystals all day long, break for lunch. Yeah. I mean, it's fun. It's like a treasure hunt.
Okay. So here's what you need to pivot to. You need to go to the diamond mines and get in that habit and maybe find a diamond.
It's so far away from where we live, and the crystal mines, we can get there in an hour and a half. So it's just, and it's fun. And I love Hot Springs. Like I said, I was there Friday and met some new people that we put their stuff on our Facebook, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. Yeah. So let's go ahead and get started. Yeah. We'll do that on the business end. Business end of things. Okay. So
giggle.
Yes, I have lost track. Is this number 29? We're on number 29, right?
Oh, goodness. Yeah, I believe so. Yes.
Yeah, because the total eclipse of the heart was 28. So this is 29, and this is part 2 of the Janie Ward story. And I think to start out, I would like a little bit of a recap, not a long one, Lise, but
I'm going to recap. I'm going to tell you, like I tell our listeners, go listen to part 1. But I will say this. So in part 1, we did cover 6 individuals' interviews to the police. And so I do have more on that. And so you will get a recap, because and like I said in the first one, there were so many interviews from the party goers that were at the party where, the incident happened with Janie. So it was, and I take the long way around, I guess. But
yes, you do.
I do.
True story.
So I only got to 6 interviews. So I do have several more interviews of the party, and then after the party. So you will get a recap in that respect. How about that?
Okay.
You will.
Sounds good.
And if you have questions, Amber, you ask them, because it could be the questions that, people listening would have. So
yeah, maybe. Yeah. All right. So where do we leave off? Because it seems like it's been forever since we've done this, but it's been a week.
I know. Well, we've had, yes. And we meant to, anyway, life got in the way a lot this week. So we're podding tonight, tomorrow probably, or whatever. And then anyway, life happens, people, you understand.
Yeah.
So we'll give you a lot of stuff, but yes. So this is part 2, and I'm just going to dive in. So you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. So the investigators that are conducting the interviews, and I don't think I outlined that completely, was an investigator, W.E. Beach, and he was with the Arkansas State Police. And then the other officer with him was Marshall Police Officer Dale England. So they were conducting these interviews. These interviews that I'm speaking of, just to recap, the event date happened September 9th of 1989. So these interviews were happening right in that time frame. Most of them were September 13th at the latest, at least these first initial interviews. And I say first because some individuals were interviewed multiple times. So here we go.
Here we go.
Here we go. So, and there's just so much here. So yeah, again, we're just going to dive in. So the first additional interview that we didn't cover in part 1 is with a person named Billy John. He states that he saw Janie leaning against a post. And again, this was on the porch, and suddenly she fell straight back. He saw Kim, her friend Kim, go to her, which is who she went to the party with. He thought she just passed out. He went inside, and then he stayed about 15 or so minutes, what he thought. They were loading Janie into Ron's truck. He did notice she had messed and wet herself, which we mentioned others saw. He said she was having a hard time breathing, but that he did see her move in the truck. So he thought she actually moved. He offered to ride in the truck bed with her, he stated, but Ron said no because he was concerned that he would get in trouble. He didn't want to get into trouble. And from the other interview sources and from Kim was already kind of in the back with her part of the way. Another individual, and Billy was young, like Billy was their age in high school. So some of these people were at the oldest 21, 22. Another party goer named Christopher stated he saw fruit in Janie's mouth. And we had discussed that in length.
Wow.
So he saw fruit in Janie's mouth, and Janie Ward, the party host, had already mentioned that he had a recipe. We went in length about this, that he had soaked the oranges in the rubbing alcohols.
Oh, my gosh.
I
still can't believe
I know.
That. God bless. Oh.
Like, I don't even... Do you care if you get a chance to Google like the ramifications? I meant to do that, the ramifications of like just ingesting rubbing alcohol, just for fun. But Christopher said he saw the fruit in Janie's mouth. He didn't see her fall, but he heard it and it sounded hard, which was like a lot of the other interviews in part 1. He said Janie Ward, which was Janie's cousin and the host of the party, was very concerned, and they went to the square. So he wasn't, after they left the party, they went to the square, directly to the square where Ron's truck was going. A Tony person, he was 22, so he was a little bit older than the others. He was at the party. He stated to the police in his interview that he saw Janie stagger during the party, but not too much. Right after this stagger, he heard her hit the ground. So he didn't see it, but he heard it. And he again said it sounded hard and made a thud. Then he stated when he found out, so he went straight to the Daisy Queen because everybody was leaving the party because they thought the police were coming. He went straight to the Daisy Queen and heard about Janie's condition. So he drove to the square where he witnessed a person named Jeannie take Janie's pulse, and then someone ran to get the ambulance.
Oh, wow.
So this was, again, at the square / some people had said square, some people had said bank parking lot. So you'll kind of hear those two things. I believe the bank parking lot was down at the square.
Well, I have an answer to your question. So if you ingest isopropyl alcohol, you are at high risk of poisoning yourself, according to the Toxicology Data Network. Since your body absorbs 80% of an oral dose in 30 minutes. In fact, this is not good. Isopropyl is about twice as toxic as liquor.
Ooh, okay. So twice as toxic. And I don't know, this is another question, and maybe for our listeners, or if you're in medicine or whatever, I do not believe that rubbing alcohol is necessarily going to kind of, in toxicology reports, register like alcohol.
I am looking that up right now. We were on the same wavelength. Okay. Yes.
That's what I understood.
It says yes, isopropyl alcohol, also known as blah, 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 blah. Okay. Sometimes detected in toxicology reports. It can be created in the body through endogenous processes such as diabetes, starvation, dehydration, and chronic ethanol use. It can also be detected in post-mortem blood samples due to high acetone concentration.
So it's going to show up, but not necessarily as the blood alcohol level.
Yes. So, however, the presence of it in post-mortem blood samples does not necessarily indicate that a person has consumed rubbing alcohol before death.
Okay.
So even if so they could have found levels of it in her toxicology report, but that isn't like totally just a wild thing to find in a toxicology report.
Yeah.
Because everybody that has certain things will have some amount in their system.
Gotcha. Okay. And again, we are not medical doctors, but we are very good at Google.
Yes. We have a PhD in Google.
Yeah, Daryl says I'm a WebMD doctor.
Yes, you are.
Literally. Oh, and I do enjoy that. So, okay, so back to this. I have my little script.
So I have another question. So they are sure she didn't choke, right?
That is not mentioned at this point.
Okay.
Yes. No one mentions, but they do. After the fall, the people mentioned that, she was
fruit in her mouth.
No, they just mentioned that she was breathing, like the breathing was labored. Or awkward or whatever. Okay. Yeah. One of these interviews that's coming up, we'll discuss the breathing. So that was, I read you, Tony. So Sarah was another party goer and also a high school student of the same age. She mentioned she went to the party and Janie told her to stay away from the punch because it would mess you up. So that's what was stated between them when she saw Janie at the party. She stated she saw Janie twist and fall back. She thought Janie had passed out. Sarah left the party and went to the Daisy Queen where someone told her about Janie passing away. She did not state who said that to her, but a lot of people just went straight to the Daisy Queen. We kind of talked about that being one of their places to hang, the pool hall and the Daisy Queen. Matthew, we got into the party line.
Yes,
we discussed the party line, I believe, because I did listen back because I was making sure I didn't double dip on some of these interviews, and we probably discussed the party line for maybe 20 minutes. But it was very interesting. But Matthew is the person that actually picked up the phone and heard the party line and such. So he created the chaos. He states that he heard two younger girls on the phone saying police were coming, indicating they were coming to the party where he was located. So he told Jamie about this. Jamie Ward, it was his house. It's very confusing between Jamie Ward
and Janie. Oh, I know. I'm trying to keep it straight in my head. I'm trying to keep it straight.
Yes, Jamie is Janie's cousin, and Jamie was living at the house and had the party. He was the party host. So Matthew told Jamie that's when the massive rush to leave happened. Matthew states to the police he had spoken to Janie at the party for 15 to 20 minutes earlier at the party, and she seemed good and in a really good mood. After the rushing around to leave, he saw Janie on the ground and checked on her. Her breathing was awkward. So he just kind of talked about that. He stated he thought she had just passed out. He also states that he clapped his hands in front of her and called her name. She opened her eyes and seemed to breathe a little better. She moved around but never said anything. He stated she appeared okay. He told the others to watch her and he left, like he got out of there. Again, everybody was like leaving, and this was in every statement about this. So now we'll discuss some more interviews of individuals more at the square. So like we chatted about, Janie was loaded in the bed of Ron's truck, and Ron and Kim were the ones that brought Janie to the party. And they were taking Janie, they were leaving the party because the police were coming, but they were also taking Janie because they wanted to get her to a doctor, was what they stated in their interviews. Now, there was a Jeannie. She was mentioned in another person's interview we just read. Jeannie, who was 16, stated to the police that she did not go to the party, but that she was at the Daisy Queen and heard people talking about what happened to Janie. She went with a person named Jeff and drove to the square and saw Janie in the back of the truck. She states her eyes were half open. She stated she told people to get the ambulance guy. She stated she checked 2 different places on Janie for a pulse, but could not find one at that time. A Pam Lindsay, who is age 27, that lived in Marshall, she states she stopped at the bank parking lot. I guess she was just driving around. It's not stated. She was not at the party. She's much older, but she stopped at the bank parking lot to talk to a person named Doug, and he told her a girl was laying in the back of the truck, not breathing. She went over, Pam did, and went over and tried to talk to her, the girl, and she would not respond. So she's telling the police this is what happened from her point of view. The girl was lying on her right side facing the cab of the truck. She said, I felt her neck and got a weak pulse and still could not get her to respond. I turned her over on her back and tried to talk to her, and she would respond, or she wouldn't respond in any way. No moaning or movement at all. So she was not responding. I checked her mouth to check for anything, and it seemed okay. Her clothing was wet. I told someone to get help and get the ambulance. Someone named Carla ran across the street and got them. So there was a Carla person there. All of this took approximately 5 minutes. And someone had told Pam that the girl had fallen and hit her head. That's what she was told by the people,
Right.
So this is adding up with everybody's collaboration from what I can see. A John C., age 24, that worked for the Pruitt's ambulance service. So he states, and this was his statement given to the police, the same police officers that we've mentioned, the next day, the next evening at 8:30. He stated that he was leaving the Searcy County Ambulance Base on East Main Street in front of the base, and he was just pulling onto the street when a person named Carla, so that would have been that same Carla that Pam mentioned, that Carla ran up to his truck and asked me if I was part of the ambulance service. I said that I was, and she told me that there was a girl that needed help in the bank parking lot and that she had fell off a porch and had a weak pulse. I immediately drive to the scene and checked. He said it said the PI, and he mentions this. I don't know if that stands for like patient or what that is standing for. Do you know?
No.
But it's alluding to Janie. I can tell because he says it again. But It says, checked the PI radial pulse and could not find one. Then I checked the carotid. Is that correct? I'm not great at medical terms.
The carotid artery.
So he checked the carotid pulse and again could not find one. I noticed fluid in the mouth. So he states that there was fluid in the mouth. I immediately called for the EMT on duty, which was Kathy Beeson, to hurry. She was already on her way. I asked the people at the scene how long she had been in this condition. They stated approximately 20 minutes. I then asked if she had been drinking. They didn't reply. The PI had a strong odor of alcohol. So he smelt that. I then helped the EMT on duty to log roll the PI to her back. So I guess they rolled her to her back. Then the driver on duty, JD Beeson, arrived on the scene in the unit. It says JD Beeson, but he mentioned a Kathy Beeson. Arrived on the scene.
I have a question.
Okay.
So if she had a strong odor of alcohol, she drank something besides beer. And that's what I would think.
Well, remember we talked about in the first part 1, remember we talked about they did state that she was drinking the punch, the PG punch.
Yes. But then I remember someone else saying that they had seen her have a beer.
Yes. Evidently there was beer and the punch at the party. So this is just their witness statements to the police. So.
And mixing different types of alcohol is also a really bad idea and can make you very, very sick. And so that's why I was wondering, did she get sick and, threw up and maybe choked on her own vomit? Is that a possibility? I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah. Like maybe in the, obviously from the witnesses' statements, she definitely, a lot of them stated she's clearly passed out and then fell. So I don't know if, of course, she passed out because of the alcohol,
Well, if she passed out and then started vomiting, she could have potentially choked on her own vomit.
Yeah, as she fell even.
Yes.
And
if she had that strong of a smell of alcohol, then she probably had quite a bit. I don't know.
I mean, considering she was sucking and eating the fruit that was soaked for 24 hours in. Yeah. So that fruit, from what I understand from all this reading, because of course I don't get it. I don't know alcohol much, but so let's just say if the fruit wasn't even soaked in the rubbing alcohol, let's just take that out. But from what I understand, that fruit just being in the punch soaks up an enormous amount of alcohol. Correct?
It does. And so before you, and the thing about it is, and I may have seen some trash can punch in my time,
Oh, we know. You mention it. Part 1.
But before you even realize what's happening, if you eat the fruit, you will get sick and you will get drunk before you even realize it, because you're eating the fruit and then you're finally like, oh my gosh, So that could have been what happened. She could have ate several pieces of fruit and started drinking a little bit too. And then it just kind of bam, all hit at once.
Yeah. And this would have been because they mentioned they poured in this Everclear alcohol. So then they had
they had Everclear and rubbing alcohol in there.
Oh yes. Cause
that's insane.
They didn't pour the rubbing alcohol into the
they
punch,
soaked
but
the fruit in it and then put it in the Everclear.
Yes.
Golly, Molly.
Yes.
Gosh.
That's what I'm understanding. So that's a lot.
That is a lot.
Right there.
That is a lot. And it's going to take a lot to convince me that this wasn't the culprit right here. This scenario, this alcohol scenario.
I mean, it sounds like and this is a 16-year-old girl. And it, some of these witnesses, and I don't know, I have not even gotten into an autopsy. And in fact, I was telling you, I'm a little frustrated because I've read through this file that was given to me, and there are allusions to the autopsy. There are statements between the police and Dr. Malik, which we'll get into probably in part 3, but there's not an actual report. So I don't know how much she weighed. The witnesses that we discussed in part 1, they just said that she was big, but to a high school person, that just means that she wasn't thin, that she wasn't tiny, but that she was too big. And especially when she was unconscious, she was just dead weight. So they couldn't lift her into the cab is what they stated. They had to put her in the bed of the truck. So anyway, but yes, I just feel like this is a lot. So he did mention at the end of his interview, the driver, he said, then the driver on duty, J.D. Beeson, arrived on the scene in the unit. And it says, which is the John that works for the Pruitt ambulance, I then started to help with crowd control. So there was quite a crowd. And as we can see from previous statements above, this is a small town USA on a Saturday night at 8:30. People were driving around. And that's what they were seeing. They were seeing something going on here at the scene. And people were just pulling over like that Pam Lindsay and such. So, yes. Let's get into, there was this Carla B. So this is, I'm assuming this is it says Carla B. So he had said a Kathy Beeson. So this is a little confusing. But a Carla B was interviewed and states that at approximately 8:30 p.m., herself and Jeanette, a person named Jeanette and Doug, pulled into the, so this isn't anyone related to the ambulance, but she was driving around with friends, I guess, pulled into the bank parking lot to talk to Ron and Jamie. So Janie Ward was there, which is Janie's cousin, and 2 other people unknown. Jamie and some other girls, they were all standing around the back of Ron's truck when we pulled in. One of them said that Janie was passed out and they were wondering if they should take her home. So they were in the bank parking lot talking to someone that pulled over and stating to this Carla, according to her, that they were talking about taking her home. So Carla stated they were talking about where she lived when someone said she had fallen at the party. I got out of the car to see if she was okay and thought she wasn't breathing. About that time is when Pam Lindsay pulled up and she started to help. I went for the ambulance. So Carla is the person that runs for the ambulance. This all took approximately 5 minutes. So that completed at least the preliminary interviews that I wanted to discuss.
Right.
Because these were people, this was all the interviews. There were several more. I told you there were 20 plus interviews from people at the party. I did not read every single one of them just because some people did not even see Janie fall. They were just at the party and then they ran when the police were coming. All of the party goers kind of had that same, I will say, a lot of these interviews were in the same realm as far as when the party started, which was around 6, and when the police were it was like, okay, we got to go. So that was all in line. So I'm not getting into that, but I did just read the interviews of people that were at the actual party or at the actual parking lot that were witnessing what was happening there at the bank parking lot once they got Janie to town. Do you have any questions before I dive into? This is going to be the investigator's notes, and this is going to be from the investigator W.E. Beach, which was with the Arkansas State Police. And this would have been September 21st. So again, this was September 8th. So he's going to recap and maybe enlighten us on what's going on.
Right.
Okay. Anything? What you think? Any questions?
No, I'm just still kind of putting it all. I'm just still kind of piecing it all together. And I probably should have listened to the other one before we started today, because I may ask the same questions that I asked during the last podcast.
That's okay. But that may be what we need to do.
But the alcohol is what I have the most question about.
Concerning.
The amount of the amount of alcohol she drank. And if you don't have the autopsy, then you don't have the toxicology results, do you?
There is a mention of it. So I will say that. So yes. So, and I did see that, and that'll come up, I promise. So there's a mention. There's just not, I'm not seeing an actual autopsy layout like you would normally see. So I'm going to have to contact them back. And okay, so Amber just picked up a fake lemon in my kitchen. And now she's playing with another one. What are you doing?
I'm sorry. There's just so many things in front of me. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm just touching everything.
Amber's at my house, and she's by herself in my kitchen, and
so I'm snooping.
She's getting antsy. Okay, so this is the investigator notes. Again, this is Investigator Beach, and he's writing these notes and giving copies to the sheriff of Searcy County and then the deputy prosecuting attorney. And again, this document is labeled as a criminal investigation division. So they were looking into this for sure. So his notes state, and this will be a recap and hopefully help some. So on Saturday, September 9th of 1989 at approximately 8:50, this investigator, talking about himself, was notified to contact the Searcy County Sheriff's Office as soon as possible. This investigator did make contact with the sheriff's office and was advised that the unexplained death of a 16-year-old white female had occurred apparently at a party outside Marshall. The female had then been driven into town by other persons at the party, after which the authorities were notified. This investigator was requested to travel to Marshall to assist in the investigation. And we will get into, and it might mention here, but we'll get into the why that they called in the state police. And maybe they do. I don't believe that was common, but they did in this instance. At approximately 10:15 p.m., this investigator arrived at the Searcy County Sheriff's Office and met with Sheriff Kent Griggs. Sheriff Griggs identified the victim as Janie Ward and said that she had been attending a party at the Steve and Jamie Ward residence on Zach Ridge Road outside Marshall. This investigator noted upon arriving at the sheriff's office that approximately 40 to 50 people were congregated outside the sheriff's office. So this is by 10 o'clock that same night. Sheriff Griggs said that most of these people had been in attendance at the party and had been advised to come to the sheriff's office for interviews. So they had gathered up everyone they could to do such. Sheriff Griggs said that the majority of these people were juveniles. Delinquent. No, I'm just kidding. According to what information had been gathered at that time, Sheriff Griggs said that the victim had reportedly fallen off a porch at the Ward residence and was then transported in the back of a pickup truck to the courthouse square in Marshall, where it was determined the victim had died. Sheriff Griggs said that the local coroner had been summoned to the square and that the body had since been transported to the Trump Funeral Home in Marshall. He said that the medical examiner's office had been notified and that the Ward residence had been secured by this Arkansas State Police trooper Ross Dean and Marshal Officer Dale England. And Dale England was who was helping Beach with all of those interviews that we went through. Sheriff Griggs said that the victim's father had filed a lawsuit against him in the recent past.
Oh, wow.
Yes, and that to avoid any apparent conflicts, he wished this investigator to handle the investigation in any manner deemed appropriately. So he was basically saying, yeah, we've had issues and you need to handle this. As this investigator and Sheriff Griggs began to discuss steps to be taken, the victim's parents arrived at the sheriff's office. They had not yet, oh goodness, been told of their daughter's death.
Oh, no.
How awful. I mean,
no.
We've kind of talked about this. You know, we have, our listeners know, we've if you're new to us, we both have 15, 16-year-old kids. So this case like hits home in an awful way. Like I can't even imagine. Just really
it's
tough.
Awful. It's absolutely awful.
Ugh, that's just, and to be the one to have to tell them. Like I don't want to be them and I don't want to be the one to have to tell them. Like that would just kill me. I don't know. This investigator was present when Sheriff Griggs advised them of that fact. So he was there. So basically they waited until the state police could arrive. This investigator and Sheriff Griggs left the room, and this investigator requested him to have the Wards brought inside for an interview first, since the incident apparently occurred at their resident. So this is probably talking about the other wards at this point.
Right.
That's a little confusing because we have Jamie Ward and then Janie Ward. So, and they are distantly related. So it goes on to say at approximately 10:30 p.m., the investigator began interviewing Jamie Ward, a white male age 17. Ward was interviewed in the presence of his father, Steve, and his natural mother and stepfather. So all his parents were there. This investigator was able to determine that Jamie Ward was the only permanent resident of the home. His father lived near Harrison, and his mother and husband lived at another location near Marshall. Jamie was being allowed to live in the house alone rather than with his father so that he might continue to attend school in Marshall. Ward said that the party started at his residence at about 6 p.m. and that there had been 25 to 30 people in attendance. He said the party was supposed to be a junior class party. He said that he and the victim attended school together and were second cousins. Ward identified Ron as the person with whom the victim had arrived. And we discussed that was Ron and Kim. But Ron was the driver. Ward said that there had been beer and PGA, pure grain alcohol punch at the party, but denied having seen any drugs there. So he denied in this first initial statement. He said that nothing particularly unusual had happened that he knew about. He said that he had been inside the house and that someone came inside and said that Janie had fallen off the porch. He said he and the others went outside and saw her laying on the ground. He said he thought she was still breathing at that time. Ward said that the victim was loaded into the back of Ron's truck to be taken to town to the doctor after it was realized that something was wrong. Ward denied knowing who had brought the alcohol to the party. Ward did say a container of the PGA punch had been taken out of the house and into the woods near the residence. So I guess when they thought the police were coming, they
dumped it.
They dumped it. Following Ward's interview, this investigator requested and obtained a consent to search the house surrounding area from Ward and his father. A copy of the consent form was furnished to them at that time. Ward agreed to meet with the officers at the scene and show them the last location in which he had seen the container of punch. So that would have been Jamie. This investigator requested Sheriff Griggs notify Trooper Dean and Officer England of this information. Trooper Dean then contacted this investigator by telephone, and this investigator advised him of the situation and what to look for. At 10:55 p.m., so this is still that night, this investigator interviewed Ron, a white male age 20. Ron said that he and Kim had picked up the victim on the courthouse square at about 5:30. He said they all went to the party, arriving around 6. Ron acknowledged that there had been alcohol and marijuana at the party, but no chemical drugs that he knew of. And again, remember, Jamie was like, he was only saying he only owned up to alcohol at that point.
Right.
And I know, I'm sorry, I'm going to pause here because like, this is just so totally teenage to me that you're worried about the marijuana at the party and you have Janie that died.
Right.
I mean, she died.
Right. I don't know. I really think I need a flow chart to keep up with all these people that were part of this that night. I really think there needs to be a flow chart or something. Yeah.
I think I could probably work one up and then post that on our
because this is a lot of Jamies and Janies and Jeanies and this is a lot.
Jimmys and John Bobs and
Bobby Johns, Bobby John.
So this is a lot of information. Yes. And so to me, and this is how, if you don't know what's going on, and if you're just on the streets and rumor mill, this, us actually looking at written document, I mean, this is how quickly things can spiral.
Yeah.
And that's how rumors get started. And I'll be the first one to say, when, my mom passed tragically, and afterwards I had, in fact, I kind of, because you just laugh instead of cry, but the whole thing, my friends were hearing crazy stuff about what happened to her. I mean, and we knew what happened. We knew what happened. And so I would laugh and be like, tell me what you've heard. Just tell me. And it was crazy stuff. And these were people telling them this, like, oh, I heard this. And they're telling like one of my besties.
Yeah.
What happened to my mom? And she's like, that's not what happened. So small town rumor mill, like, anyway, it is what it is. So Ron said he owned up to the marijuana. Okay. I kind of lost my train of thought there, but he said no chemical drugs were at the party. Ron said he had been at the party for about 2 hours and that kind of adds up with what he had said. He said that he too had been inside the house when the victim fell from the porch, but came outside afterwards. He said that the victim was breathing when he saw her. Ron said he and the others put her in the back of his truck to bring her to town. He said that she had been too limp to get inside the truck. He said that Kim had ridden in the back of the truck with the victim and at one point told him that the victim had said she was cold. So he's stating that he understood that Janie had said she was cold to Kim. He said before they got back to town, Kim crawled back inside the truck through the cab window. Ron said they came to town and directed another girl they saw at the courthouse square to get the ambulance personnel. Ron said he had seen the victim drinking alcohol, but had never seen her using any drugs. At 11, so a little bit later, this investigator interviewed Kim, a white female, age 17. Kim acknowledged she and Ron had taken the victim to the party and acknowledged having seen the victim drinking beer at the party. She says beer. Oh, you're laughing. I see. Did someone come in?
I got scared. No, it's just your husband.
Okay, Daryl's been napping, so he probably didn't know that Amber
I looked up and I thought it was a ghost.
It's unexplained, people. It's unexplained Daryl in the kitchen. Okay, so Kim stated to the officers that she had seen. Now, this is interesting. So she only claimed that she saw Janie drinking beer. She said that approximately 2 hours after they arrived, someone yelled, "The cops are coming," and that she ran inside the residence. Kim said she came back outside shortly and saw the victim lying on the ground. She said someone yelled, "Take her to the doctor," at which time the victim was placed in the back of Ron's truck. Kim said that she did not ride in the back of the truck with the victim. She said she didn't get in the back with her and that the victim was still breathing and mumbled something. No, she said, this is so confusing. She said she did get in the back with her once and that the victim was still breathing and mumbled something. She said she could not understand what the victim said. Following this interview, this investigator requested Sheriff Griggs to have some of his officers begin going through the crowd that was outside the sheriff's office to obtain names, addresses, and phone numbers from all of them. This investigator also requested that those officers speak briefly with each one to see if any pertinent information could be obtained before formal interviews were done. At 11:45, this investigator met with the parents of the victim and the person named Gary. And I had told you in the part 1, we discussed Gary because Gary actually saw Janie fall. So Gary's interview was a little bit more than anyone else's because of that. This investigator spoke briefly with the parents and then listened as Gary gave his version of what happened. This investigator asked the victim's parents to leave the room so that a formal statement could be taken from Gary. Gary said that he had seen the victim drinking at the party, but did not think she had any coordination problems. He said that after the victim had been there for some time at the party, he saw her go to a beer keg on the front porch and fill up her cup. He said she stood up between a post and the railing in an open area of the porch and then fell straight back as if she had passed out. Gary said that it appeared to him that the victim fell primarily on her neck and shoulders. Gary said that the victim was heavy set and that he thought she had broken her neck. Gary said that the victim started gasping in irregular breaths. He said that he and the others picked her up and put her on the porch, and that in his opinion, the victim had urinated and defecated on herself. He said that her eyes were half open and that she was not blinking. And we had gone through that. Gary said that immediately after that, someone yelled about the police coming and everyone started running around like maniacs, in his words, trying to leave. He said that he tried to get people to help him with the victim, but could not. He said that he and the others, I guess he finally got some help and loaded the victim in the back of Ron's truck because it was the nearest available vehicle that could get out. Gary said that this was the last he saw of the victim until he saw her later still in the back of the truck on the courthouse square.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Just tragic.
So he did, I know it's just tragic.
A mess.
And it, and I hate to say that, I mean, again, it's almost like you can see this, you know what I'm saying? Like you can see this.
Oh, yeah.
And again, it's teenager to me to be like, well, and I have to think back, okay, they're underage, they are scared, they were drinking, there was marijuana. And back in this was late 80s, marijuana you could get in a lot of trouble for. I know that that's different now. Hello. And unfortunately you can smell it everywhere and, anywhere and everywhere.
You go?
I mean, I'll tell you, sister. The other night when we were leaving the Searcy Lions baseball game, there's like a line of houses like right there, like their fence lines. And we were walking to our cars after the ball game. So this was probably, I don't know, 8 or 9. And oh yeah. And I think it was Dylan's dad was like, "Do you smell that?" And I'm like, yeah, it was stout. And we're talking outside.
But now you can have a card and you can do that.
Yeah, you can. Yes, it's legal. I'm just saying it's legal. And when we went to New York City, oh my goodness, there was more pot stores than coffee shops. I'm like, where did all the coffee go? It's just pot. So, like, good grief. But I don't want to offend the marijuanas smokers.
You don't want to offend the marijuana cigarettes out there.
Actually, I don't. I mean,
you mean the marijuana smokers.
It really stinks. I mean, I thought cigarettes stink, but it really stinks.
Wait a minute, was that the first time you'd ever smelled marijuana? Was out there walking to your car?
I'll tell you, the first time I ever smelled marijuana was in 1999 in the Jonesboro. It was, I went to, what do you call it? A-State, Arkansas State University.
Yeah.
And it was I went into the boys' dorms. I don't remember what the boys' dorms were called, but it was a huge tower. I had made friends with this guy, and me and Courtney, went over there, and man, I was like, what is that smell? It smells so bad. And he was like, oh, it's pot, like I'm so like innocent, it's a terrible smell to me. Daryl says I'm like a bloodhound. Like he can walk in the house and I can literally tell you what he ate for lunch. Like just walking in the house. I'm like, you had something with cilantro and garlic. Like, boom. Like you just walked in. You didn't even talk to me. Anyway, my smell is a curse. Okay. It's a curse.
I would have to agree with that too.
Okay. So are you ready for more?
Yeah,
or do you have any questions? Okay.
I don't know.
You don't know? Are you just confused?
I don't. No, I don't. No, I don't have any questions.
You're just busy thinking about the marijuanas.
I'm still thinking about all that you just said, but go ahead.
Okay. And I don't like blue jean shorts, and I saw a lot
everything
of those.
You don't like. Magic blue jean shorts. Yeah.
It was warm today. It was warm today. We stopped by a Target after we have bought Ella prom dress. So we were in the Conway area and we went to the Target and there were lots of blue jean shorts and I was not pleased. It's like the warm weather and the blue jean shorts come out. Okay.
Yeah.
Don't even get me started. So after Gary's interview, we're still on Investigator Beach's notes. The investigator requested Sheriff Griggs to instruct all other persons outside to go home. So he had already collected their information and that they would be contacted later. So this was probably around midnight, I guess, by this time. So he advised that one subject by the name of Richard, a white male, age 18, had asked to speak with the investigator that night. So at 12:50 a.m., this investigator interviewed Richard. He had said that he had gotten to the party at 7 and had talked with the victim for approximately 30 minutes. He said that the victim did not appear to be intoxicated at that time. Richard said he left the party and was told later that the incident had happened 5 or 10 minutes after he left, which would be like, he's, in his words, 7:15, let's say. Richard said that a person named Russell had told him that the victim was loaded into the truck. Then they went to hide the beer kegs and other items before the victim was brought to town. So he's saying that they were more concerned with hiding stuff. Following Richard's interview, this investigator examined the rear bed area of Ron's pickup truck, which had been used to transport the victim to Marshall. Sheriff's personnel had instructed Ron to leave the truck for the time at the sheriff's office. So they took possession of Ron's truck that night, pending further investigation. It had been reported that the victim was wet and it had a considerable amount of sand/dirt in her hair and on her clothing. This investigator noted during the examination of the rear of the truck that it also was quite wet and contained dirt in some amounts. This investigator also recovered a wet white bed sheet from the rear of the truck, which at that time was thought to have been used to cover the victim. This investigator next met with the medical examiner's office investigator named Rusty Dillon. Is this person related to you?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
My maiden name is Dillon.
That's your maiden name. I'm just asking because you seem to be related to everyone in the county. So
only if their last name is Langley. But go ahead.
Gotcha. On the Langley side.
Yeah.
So he was talking to investigator Dillon and Arkansas State Trooper Ross Dean. This investigator received from Trooper Dean items seized by he and Officer England during the search of the Ward residence, because they had gone out to secure the land, or in the house immediately, and surrounding area. These items including a beer keg pump and a partially smoked hand-rolled cigarette suspected of being the marijuana.
I thought you were going to say partially smoked ham for a minute. Is that because I'm so hungry right now? I'm
sorry. We have little Sammys in the fridge right there.
Yeah, I may have to get one when we're done.
Okay. So this investigator met. Okay, this is back to the Dean and the Dillon that's not related to you, right?
Right.
So Officer England, during the search of the Ward residence, we talked about this, the marijuana. They found the marijuana. This investigator bagged and marked the items deemed appropriate, executed on an evidence submission sheet, and delivered the items to Investigator Dillon for transportation to the crime lab for further analysis and examination. So they did confiscate. So there is a lab sheet that I'll go over with you. Investigator Dillon said that he had gone to the crime scene with the local coroner. He advised that the ground in the reported area of the fall did not appear to be disturbed. Investigator Dillon did say that there appeared to be sawdust and wood chips in the area where she was found. So please remember that, people. Okay?
Sawdust, wood chips. Got it.
So because they're talking about how she was dirty, sandy, and wet, and they did find that the back of the truck bed was the same. And in the part 1, I wanted you all to remember that when she left the house, her parents notated her clothing, was the pinstripe shirt, but everybody at the party said she was wearing a t-shirt. So those are the things to remember. Okay. After further discussion of the situation, this investigator and Investigator Dillon returned to the funeral home to further view the victim's body. No outstanding injuries or trauma, and remember all this because I highlighted this. This will come up later. No outstanding injuries or trauma of any kind was observed by the investigators. Post-mortem lividity was visible at the time of the examination, but nothing unusual was noted. So if you do not know what lividity is, listeners, I have read a lot of Patricia Cornwell's novels, the Dr. Case Scarpetta, and I just got done reading a really great novel by the lady that does the podcast Morbid, Elena. And the novel, it is fiction, but it's based on a medical examiner. So lividity is basically when you die, your blood is going to pool where you lay. So it's just your blood isn't flowing anymore, but it's still in your body. Right. So you can appear to be bruised. So remember this as well. So this is number 3 to remember. Lividity, the pooling of the blood.
And she went backwards and landed on her back. So
yes. And so when she died, there's going to be a certain amount of lividity to wherever, if she was laying on her side for a long time, she's going to have a pool of lividity going on. So they're just saying no outstanding injuries or trauma of any kind was observed. So post-mortem lividity was visible at the time of the examination. And this would have been, so he's talking about, they went over there that night. So what was this, already 1 a.m. and she had passed probably somewhere around what? We don't
8,
know for sure.
Yeah.
But 8, because everybody's talking about how by the time, 8:30, she was at the bank parking lot. The investigators returned to the sheriff's office and again met with the victim's family. Family members advised there was no particular medical history concerning the victim and no known current medical problems. And this says, I'm turning this page. It was learned during one of the earlier witness interviews that the victim had not gone home the previous night. So he's finding this out. This investigator inquired of the family about the victim's whereabouts the previous day. The family explained that they had lived quite some distance away from Marshall, out in the country. The victim's mother said that it was not unusual for the victim to stay with friends in town on occasion and be picked up by the parents the following day. The father of the victim said that he had been to the funeral home to view the victim's body. He expressed concern over what he referred to as an abrasion across one of the victim's ears. This investigator and Investigator Dillon, as stated, noted no outstanding marks on the body. It is possible that the father mistook some of the post-mortem lividity as an injury. Hey, remember this.
Yeah, that's possible.
It is possible. If you don't know death or what happens in death. And I don't know Ron Ward's understanding, although all I can understand of his is that he was probably in shock.
Right.
I can't even imagine what he was going through. I just can't. So he's expressing this. This possibility was not discussed with the family at that time. So it's not like they told him. I'm sure that they didn't want to say, well, it's the postmortem lividity. I'm sure they were just trying to, I don't know. It was a delicate, I'm sure, situation for the investigator at that time because the Ward family was probably beside themselves. This investigator only assured them that everything possible would be done to determine exactly what had happened to their daughter. One of the family members said that a female juvenile had called a person named Brad. So this is what's going on.
More for my flow chart. I'm telling you, I'm having problems keeping up with all these people.
I know. So they called this Brad, another relative of the victim, earlier and said that the victim had been involved in a traffic accident prior to the party. At approximately 3:30 a.m., this investigator contacted a person named Mrs. Richard. Mrs. Richard said that her daughter had made the call. However, the information furnished about the traffic accident had been a misunderstanding. So this is small town USA.
Yes.
She said that her daughter had been under the impression at the time that the victim had been hurt in an accident involving vehicles. So this is just the rumor mill, just beginning. At approximately 3:45 a.m., this investigator obtained a handwritten report from Marshall ambulance driver John. His name is John Childers. A copy of that report will be made in the file. At approximately 4 a.m., the investigator accompanied Officer Dale England back to the Ward residence. So this would have been Jamie's residence. Actions taken and observation made will be dictated in the crime scene search. So they're doing their first search, and he went out there as well. Following further examination of the crime scene, this investigator returned to the sheriff's office and met with deputy prosecuting attorney. Her name was Judith Conway. Reference information gathered at that point. Additional action to be taken in the case was discussed, after which this investigator returned to Mountain Home. So he lived in Mountain Home. On Monday morning, September 11th, 1989, Deputy Prosecuting Attorney Conway contacted this investigator and advised that she had been in contact with Dr. Malik. So this is where Malik is referenced, and I'm going to advise our listeners to listen to our Boys on the Tracks. We go into a very deep dive. We do a three-part on the Boys on the Tracks?
Ooh. No, it was two. It was two-part.
Two-part. Mm-hmm. We did a deep dive and we discussed Dr. Malik, who was the medical examiner. Let's put it this way. He had a 10-year run. He had a lot of problems. People were not happy. It turned out that he didn't actually know a lot. He wasn't actually trained or qualified for his position.
Not like people thought he was.
Not like they thought. And he was actually, and we discussed this is all public record and whatever. He was actually, when President Clinton moved into running for office for the presidency, he went, basically, Malik was such an issue for President Clinton and his campaign that he moved Dr. Malik to a different position and got him out of being the state's medical examiner. So again, I'm not going to go into all of Dr. Malik's issues in this at this point, but
we could do a whole episode on Dr. Malik.
We certainly could, and we did a deep dive. So
yeah, we might someday.
Yeah. So Dr. Malik had said, and this was Monday, so this was after, the weekend, I guess. Dr. Malik had said that the cause of the victim's death stemmed from injuries to the back of the head and spinal column. Dr. Malik said that the injuries could have been consistent with the type of fall described, and at that time, no blood alcohol nor drug screening results were available. On Wednesday, September 13th, this investigator returned to the Searcy County Sheriff's Office and continued witness interviews in conjunction with Officer England and the attorney, the prosecuting attorney. A total of 14 witnesses were interviewed at that time. The information obtained and identity of the witnesses will be submitted in a report based on that information gathered. The information about the party at the Ward's residence had been announced at school among the students around Wednesday, September 6th. So the party was the 9th. Donations were made by and to various students for the party. All the money gathered, which had been estimated to be around $150 to $160, was given to Janie Ward with an understanding by the contributors that the money was to go to alcoholic beverages for the party. None of the witnesses interviewed could say that they knew from where or whom the liquor had come, and we already kind of went into that in part 1. It was determined that 2 beer kegs and other items had been removed from the residence by Janie Ward and others prior to the arrival of the police. Following the interviews, this investigator and deputy prosecuting attorney Conway again discussed additional investigative steps to be taken, including use of the prosecuting attorney subpoenas to re-interview some of these witnesses and put them under oath. This investigator returned to Mountain Home with plans to return to Searcy County the following week. On Thursday, September 14th, the prosecuting attorney contacted this investigator and advised she had been contacted by the medical examiner's office. Listen to this. And I did look up some information. According to the medical examiner's office representatives, the victim's blood alcohol level was placed at 0.05. Drug screen results were not available. It does say a great number of the witnesses still had to be interviewed, and they were going to be doing additional re-interviews. And that's the end of the report. I went ahead and looked up because I had always understood at 0.05, you're kind of teetering, but it does state that would be the legal alcohol limit, which would be if you were, it would be illegal. So if you were driving with a 0.05 back at this time, you would get a DUI. And also, actually, and it does go on, the internet told me this.
The internet. The internet, huh? Okay.
Yes, I believe this was like the state, because I looked in the Arkansas state at this time. It said only a 0.02 if you're under 21. And there is a difference when you are female as opposed to male.
No, and that is true.
So she was a 16-year-old. So they also felt like female to male and then age. So basically, if Janie had been driving, she would have been double over the limit that is legal.
Right.
And that's just with that is just with her blood alcohol level. Not even because again, we know that she was eating the oranges that were, soaked in the rubbing alcohol.
I can't believe it was not higher than that. Mm-hmm. That's one of my questions. That's one thing that I really need answers to, like how soon do they do this toxicology? I mean, will isopropyl alcohol, will that still, how long until you can still get an accurate toxicology from that? Like how long after do they?
I don't know. And that is very interesting. So people phone us, call us on the cell phone. No, send us an email if you know anything about these numbers. So I'm going to end there because this was a lot of information to take in.
Yes.
And do you have questions, Amber? And I will do. We'll kind of do an outline. And again, we really strove. Like I didn't feel like putting out people's last names. I'm not going to do that. But anyway, we're not going to put out their last names.
I don't think so. Yeah, it
Except
doesn't really. It doesn't matter now.
It doesn't matter now. And Janie Ward, the reason why we did that is because it's very important to understand they were related. So that was, and all these things are public record. You can get access to, and of course, legally we can share. So there you go. So there's part 2, and there's more. There's a lot more to come, guys. I'm sorry.
Wow.
There's just a lot more to come.
Yeah.
Do you have questions, or do you want? I know we're doing business. We've got some business.
No, we do have some business to do before we get off here.
Yes.
First, we do have a huge following on Facebook now, which we are so grateful for that.
Huge.
Yeah. It's been a whirlwind. Growing. Yes, and growing. I went to Hot Springs on Friday, went to this amazing little bookstore underneath the Arlington. And the Arlington just kind of gives me those spooky vibes anyway. Well, now at the basement of the Arlington, there's a bookstore, a vintage record store, a couple of other stores down there. It is so awesome. So we did that. We did a tour of the bathhouse, which also has some spooky vibes. And so I'm looking at, possibly this summer, Lisa and I doing some lives from down there. And I'm really excited about that. So I had a really great experience. And then we put all of that on our Facebook, and then it blew up, and we have a lot of likes. So hopefully that bookstore got a lot of business because we like to support independent local bookstores, right?
I love a bookstore.
Yeah.
And I will plug in Searcy just for fun. I don't, have you been downtown lately? Have you noticed there's a bookstore downtown Searcy? So we will.
I've been there.
Yeah. I have not. So, and then there's your favorite Books by the Pound.
Books by the Pound. That's right. That's right. So I also wanted to mention that we do have a P.O. box now, and we have some decals. And so if you are interested in a decal, let us know. Send us some mail.
Send us the mail. And then we'll send
us some mail, and we'll send you a decal. What is our P.O. box?
Okay, our P.O. box is 120. So P.O. box 120, Searcy, Arkansas 72145. And we do have that on our Facebook and Instagram.
Yes.
And we do have such a huge following on the Facebook, but please go in and share the Instagram. But hey,
yes.
If you were just on Facebook, which a lot of us are, then just share. Keep inviting. Keep inviting, guys.
Definitely.
And you're going to plug the RCast, right?
The RCast, yes. We, I stumbled upon this and I put it on our Facebook. There is a form for podcast awards in Arkansas, which is really cool. It's like the Emmys of podcasting in Arkansas. So, you know, yeah. So we have been nominated a couple of times by listeners. And so if you feel compelled to nominate us, I do have the link to the RCast on our Facebook page. And you can also go to the RCast Facebook page. And if you don't know what RCast is, it's a collaborative full of podcasters from our area, and there's lots of cool people on there. So it's worth a look.
Yes, a lot of people. It is very, and yes, go vote.
Yes, go vote for RCast. And then finally, we do have 30,000 streams, which is great, and we're growing and rising. So yeah, we appreciate everyone listening. We do have another episode that will be coming out tomorrow, and it will be about the fallen blackbirds of Beebe, Arkansas, which is one of the coolest stories that have come about in the last 10 years, I think. Actually, it's been longer than 10 years, man.
I was going to ask what year that was.
It was 2011, so it's been a while. So we will do that one tomorrow, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Yes. Yay. And we'll continue plugging away at Janie Ward. And afterwards, I do have something coming up after that will be equally something that we need the listeners to get involved in. So,
yes. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, sounds great. All right. Yay. Well, thanks, Lis. And we will talk to you guys tomorrow. Thank you.
Love ya.